So good morning students. In today's video, let us discuss some competitive exam questions from the chapter Structure of Atom. So before going into questions, now let's have a quick synopsis part of this chapter. So let us discuss few important concepts that you studied in your first year. So under the chapter Structure of Atom. So first let me take up the word atom. So I hope you all know what an atom is. So atom is nothing but it's a very basic unit of a matter, right? So John Dalton, in his theory called Dalton's atomic theory, he gave some important things about the properties of an atom. So where he said that atom, that is the very basic unit, which is the smallest indivisible particle of a matter, and atoms of same element, they have the same mass and properties, whereas atoms of different elements, they have got different mass and properties. And in order to form a compound, atoms of different elements, they should combine in a fixed ratio. So that is about Dalton's atomic theory. So that was given in 18th century. So where he has no idea about the presence of subatomic particles. So later, so we know that scientists named J.J. Thomson, Chadwick and Goldstein, so they discovered electrons, protons and neutrons, right, that we call as subatomic particles. So here, so what you have to remember under this part is about some values like mass of electron, mass of proton, okay, and mass of neutron. So we all know that the mass of electron, that is given by, so this is the values. So important here, the mass of electron is given by 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg, okay, and the masses of protons and neutrons, they are almost same, the value is given by 1.67 into 10 to the power minus 27 kg, okay, mass of electron and masses of proton and neutron. And about their charges, the charges of electrons and protons, okay, their magnitude, they are same, but they have got different charges, opposite charges, signs are different. The charge of electron, so that is given by, so charge of electron is minus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, and the proton, it also has the same value but with opposite sign. The charge of proton is given by plus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. So you have to remember all these values in order to solve some questions. So after this, so we have studied some important terms called isotopes, isobars and isotones. So what are isobars? So isobars are nothing but atoms of different elements, so with the same mass number, different atomic number. So you know the examples for isobars, right? And isotope, the isotopes are nothing but atoms of same element with the same atomic number but a different mass number. So and one more term under this is isotones. So isotones are nothing but the species which contains same number of neutrons. So for example, if you consider these two species and nitrogen, okay, so now if you calculate the number of neutrons in these two species, so you'll get same number of neutrons, right? So these species are called as isotones. So isotones are nothing but species which contain same number of neutrons. So after this concept, next is about the various atomic models, right? So after the discovery of subatomic particles like electron, proton and neutron, the next question is about their arrangement inside an atom, right? So many theories were proposed in order to explain the distribution of the subatomic particles inside the atom. So starting with the first considerable theory was given by the scientist named J.J. Thomson, and his model was, it is named as Thomson's plum pudding model, or it is where, or it is called as plum pudding model, where he treated your atom as a sphere of positive charges, where the electrons were embedded inside your positively charged species. So that model, so it has got various limitations. So in order to overcome the limitations of Thomson's atomic model, the next important model was given by Rutherford. So the Rutherford, the model, it was named as Rutherford's nuclear model. Okay, so Rutherford's nuclear model, where he discovered the presence of a nucleus in an atom. So it is known as Rutherford's nuclear model. So he performed an experiment called alpha scattering experiment, where he took a gold foil and bombarded that gold foil with the alpha radiation. Okay, so through his experiment he got to know about the presence of positively charged region inside an atom, and he called that small positive region as a nucleus, and therefore the model is known as Rutherford's nuclear model. Okay, so this Rutherford nuclear model failed to explain the stability and spectrum of an atom. So after this Rutherford nuclear model, the next model was given by Bohr, so which is very well known as Bohr's atomic model. So before going into this Bohr's atomic model, so now let us study some developments which leads to this Bohr's atomic model. So there are two main developments. The first point is about the dual behavior of, or dual nature of, electromagnetic radiation, and second one is about the atomic spectra. Okay, so atomic spectra. So Bohr's atomic model was proposed on the basis of these 2 points, that is dual nature of electromagnetic radiation, and the second one is atomic spectra. So talking about this dual nature, so what is this electromagnetic radiation is? We know that electromagnetic radiation is the one which consists of both electric and magnetic field, so that are acting perpendicular to each other, right? So electromagnetic radiation, the first theory about this electromagnetic radiation was given by Maxwell, where he considered this electromagnetic radiation as a wave, right? So when we talk about a wave, then there we define certain parameters of wave like wavelength, its frequency, wave number, amplitude and so on, and we derived some expressions, right? So which relates that parameters to one another, like, so we know that the frequency mu, that is inversely proportional to 1 by lambda. So these concepts are also very important. So frequency nu is inversely proportional to lambda, or nu is equal to c by lambda, right? So nu is equal to c by lambda, and we had this relationship between a wave number and wavelength, that is nu bar is equal to 1 by lambda, right? And also the relationship between nu and nu bar, right? So that is nu is equal to c into nu bar, right? So under Maxwell's electromagnetic theory, so we have studied this relationship. Okay, so and also we studied about the electromagnetic spectrum, where various electromagnetic radiations are arranged according to their wavelengths or frequency in the order of increasing order of their wavelengths, right? So starting from cosmic rays, we have various electromagnetic radiations in electromagnetic spectrum. So just know the order of that arrangement. Okay, so next after that, the thing is about the de Broglie hypothesis. So the scientist named de Broglie, so he confirmed the dual nature, the presence of dual nature in a small moving particles, and he gave one important equation called the de Broglie equation. So where he related the wavelength of a matter wave with the its momentum, right? The de Broglie equation, the well known equation is given by lambda is equal to h by mv, right? H by mv, where lambda is known as the wavelength of the matter wave, right? So what he proposed, de Broglie, he said that all small moving particles, they have got dual nature, right? Both particle nature as well as wave nature, and he gave the relationship between the wavelength of that moving particle with its momentum, right? So lambda is equal to h by p. So we can also rewrite the de Broglie equation as lambda is equal to h by p. So where p is nothing but momentum, p is nothing but the product of mass and velocity, right? P is equal to mv, right? So this is also very, very important, okay? So this is about the de Broglie hypothesis. Next important concept, so that you have to remember under this chapter, is about Heisenberg uncertainty principle. I hope you all know all these concepts very well. It's just time to recall the concept that you studied in your first year. Okay. So next concept is about Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So what it states? So according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, it is impossible to determine both what position and momentum of a moving electron simultaneously, and the relationship or the expression or mathematical form of this Heisenberg uncertainty principle is given by delta x into delta p is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi, right? Where h is known as Planck's constant, right? H is known as Planck's constant. You know the value of this h, that is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second, and this expression can also be written in terms of velocity. We know that p is equal to delta p can also be written like this, delta p is equal to m into delta v, right? In terms of velocity, Heisenberg equation can be written like this, delta x into delta v is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi m. Okay, so this is about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So after this, next it comes Bohr model. So Bohr model is very, very important model. So where Bohr, he said that the atom, okay, so in an atom the electrons will revolve around a positively charged nucleus in a circular path, right? So according to Bohr, the electrons will revolve around the nucleus in a definite circular path of definite radius and energy, and that circular paths are called as orbits, right? Or we also call it as shells, right? We have various shells like K, L, M and N shells corresponding to first, second, third and fourth orbit respectively, right? So that is about the first postulate of Bohr atomic theory, and next concept or next postulate under this theory is so about the energy of an electron. We know that so as long as an electron in a particular orbit, so it doesn't lose or gain energy, but when it jumps to higher energy, so from lower energy to higher energy, what happens? Energy will be absorbed by that electron, and when it jumps from higher energy level to lower energy level, the energy is emitted, right? And the frequency of that emitted radiation, that is given by, right, we know that delta E is equal to h mu, and the frequency is given by mu is equal to delta E by h, where delta E is nothing but the difference in the energy levels, that is E2 minus E1 by h. Okay, and the last point under this is about the angular momentum of the moving electron. So we know that the angular momentum of a moving electron in a particular orbit is given by the formula mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi, right? So nh by 2 pi. So where m is nothing but the mass of the electron, v is its velocity, r is the radius of particular orbit where the electron is present, and n is nothing but the orbit, and h Planck's constant. Okay, so these are the important points of Bohr's atomic theory. And so one more important thing here is this, by considering or by taking this Bohr atomic model, it is possible to explain the spectrum of an atom, right? So especially the Bohr atomic model was explained by taking hydrogen atom. Okay, so hydrogen atom. One of the major limitations of this Bohr atomic model is, see, we cannot apply this Bohr theory to all the atoms. We can apply it only for hydrogen atom and hydrogen like atoms. Okay, and the important advantage of this Bohr atomic model is we can explain the various atomic spectrum, or we can explain the spectrum of an atom by considering this Bohr atomic model. So that is under what? The spectrum, atomic spectrum of hydrogen, where you studied about the various lines, right? So various series like Lyman series, Balmer series, right? Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, Brackett and Fund series, right? Brackett and Fund series. So these are the various series of spectral lines of hydrogen atom. And here the scientist named Rydberg, he gave an important equation for the calculation of wave number of the spectral line in the hydrogen atom. The formula is also very important. That is given by 1 by lambda, or what we called it as wave number, mu bar is equal to RH z square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. So this equation is well known as Rydberg equation. So where RH is known as Rydberg's constant. The value of Rydberg constant, so in terms of wave number, the value of Rydberg constant is given as 109,677 centimeter inverse. We can also write the value of Rydberg constant in terms of electron volt and also in terms of joule, so which we'll see in the question part. So this is about the spectral line, you know. So when this Lyman series, so for Lyman series, this Lyman series is formed when the electrons from higher energy levels, that is from higher energy levels, when they jumps into first energy level, it will lead to the formation of Lyman series. Okay, so for Lyman series we know that the value of n1 is 1 and the value of n2, the higher energy levels with respect to n1, so it is 2, 3, 4, etc. and so on. For Balmer series, the value of n1 ground state, that is 2, second energy level, the value of n1 is 2 and the value of n2, they are 3, 4, etc. And for Paschen series, the value of n1 is a 3 and value of n2 is 4, 5 and 6, etc. And for Brackett, so it is n1 is a 4 and n2 5, 6, 7. And for the last series of lines, that is Fund series, the value of n1 is 5 and n2 is 6, 7 and 8, right? And you may expect a question to calculate the number of spectral lines. Okay, so number of spectral lines can be calculated by the formula n minus 1 divided by 2. Okay, so number of spectral lines when an electron jumps from higher energy level to lower energy level or ground state, then they may ask you to calculate the number of spectral lines. Okay, for example, what is the number of spectral lines when an electron jumps from n equal to 5 to ground state? So then you have to substitute the value of n as 5 and just do the calculation and you will get the number of spectral line for that particular transition. Okay, so this is about the spectral line concept. So next is about the quantum mechanical model of an atom. So under quantum mechanics, the famous equation called Schrödinger wave equation is there, which gives or which explains the probability of electrons around the nucleus. So that is given as E xi is equal to H cap xi, right? So this equation is known as the Schrodinger wave equation, where xi is nothing but wave function. So wave function is nothing but it is the probability of finding the electron around the nucleus. Okay, so xi. So that is nothing but a quantum mechanical approach towards the structure of atom. So under that we have seen about the quantum numbers. Okay, so quantum numbers, it explains about the distribution of electrons around the nucleus, and we have 4 quantum numbers in order to define an electron, like, so they are principal quantum number, right? So we have 4 quantum numbers. So the first quantum number is a principal quantum number. Second one, that is known as azimuthal quantum number, or that is also known as what, angular momentum quantum number. And we have third quantum number, as magnetic quantum number, and the last one is a spin quantum number. Okay, so by concluding all these quantum numbers, we can define a position of an electron inside the atom. So where principal quantum number is denoted by the letter n, which represents or which tells us about the position of an electron in a main shell, or it explains the shell to which your electron belongs, right? The n. So n represents K shell, L shell, M shell, so respectively. So when n equal to 1, it represents K shell. Okay, it explains the main shell of an electron, main shell and its energy. So where we can have the values of n as 1, 2, 3 up to infinity. Next is about azimuthal quantum number. Azimuthal quantum number explains the subshell of an electron, right? For the given value of n, the azimuthal quantum number can have the value starting from 0, 1, 2 up to n minus 1. Okay, so up to n minus 1, it explains, it denotes the subshell of an electron, right? Here, corresponding to the value of this L, we have various orbitals, like when L equal to 0, it denotes which subshell or which orbital, it denotes the S subshell. Okay, so S subshell, this is very important. So L equal to 1, it denotes which subshell, it is P subshell, and L equal to 2, it denotes D subshell, and L is equal to 3, it denotes your F subshell. Okay, it denotes the subshell of electron and also the energy of the subshell. So this is also known as orbital angular momentum quantum number. Okay, so because by using this value we can calculate the angular momentum of an electron in a particular orbital by using the formula square root of L into L plus 1 h by 2 pi. Okay, so orbital angular momentum can be calculated by using the formula square root of L into L plus 1 h by 2 pi, where L is nothing but this azimuthal quantum number. And next comes your magnetic quantum number, so which is denoted by the letter M. So it denotes the orientation of atomic orbitals in space, right? So various orientation of these atomic orbitals in space, we know that for the given value of L, M, the total values of M can be 2L plus 1. Okay, so we can have 2L plus 1 starting from minus L to plus L. Okay, for example, if L is equal to 0, L is equal to 0 means it denotes S subshell. So when L is equal to 0, if you substitute the value of L in this equation, we will get 1 orientation. So L is 0, 2 into 0 plus 1. So only one orientation is possible for S orbital, right? S subshell. The value of what? Value of M with L equal to 0 is when L equal to 0, only one orientation is possible and the value of M is 0, right? Similarly, when L equal to 1, so the total 3 orientations are possible for your orbital with L equal to 1 value, and L equal to 1 it denotes your p orbital, and for L equal to 1 M can have the value starting from -1, 0 to +1. So there are 3 orientations possible for your p orbital. We know that they are px, py and pz, right? So similarly we can write the values for d and f orbitals. The last quantum number is nothing but a spin quantum number, so which denotes what the orientation, or which denotes the spin of your electron. Okay, so whether your electron it has anti-clockwise spin or clockwise spin. So consequently we have 2 values for spin quantum number, that is +12, which denotes the clockwise rotation of your electron, and -12 is anti-clockwise rotation of electron. So this is about the quantum numbers. So after this, the part of this chapter is about distribution of electrons into various atomic orbitals, and that distribution, what we call it as electronic configuration. So in order to write electronic configuration of a particular element, so we need to follow certain rules, right? So that is nothing but the distribution of electrons in various orbitals. In order to distribute the electrons in various orbitals, we need to follow certain rules, right? Starting from Aufbau principle. Next we have N plus L rule, Pauli's exclusion principle, and last one is Hund's rule. So we have Aufbau principle. So Aufbau principle, it states that the electrons are filled in various orbitals in the increasing order of their energies, and after that we have N plus L rule. Okay, so N plus L rule states that if 2 orbitals with the different N plus L value, then the one with lower N plus L value will be filled up first, and for the 2 orbitals with the same N plus L value, then the orbital with the lower N value will be filled up first. So that is about the second rule, and third rule is nothing but Pauli's exclusion principle. So Pauli's exclusion principle states that no 2 electrons can have the same values for 4 quantum numbers, right? So that is about the third rule, and the last one is about Hund's multiplicity rule. And according to Hund's rule, it states that no pairing of electron takes place in p, d, f orbitals until each of them is occupied by 1 electron. So that is about Hund's rule. So according to all these rules, we will write an electronic configuration for a particular orbital. So under the electronic configuration, so you need to remember one point, that is about the stability of half filled, completely filled configuration. You know that half filled configuration and completely filled configuration, they have got extra stability because of the symmetrical distribution of energy, symmetrical distribution of electrons. Hence they have got high exchange energies. Because of that half filled and completely filled configuration, they have got extra stability. And so this is about a quick synopsis on the chapter structure of atom. So now let's start with the questions. So I'll explain few more points under the questions part. So let us start with question number 1. So a radium isotope, okay, I hope it is visible, radium isotope with the mass number 224 and atomic number 88, okay. A radium isotope on emission of an alpha particle gives rise to a new element whose mass number and atomic number will be. So you need to calculate the mass number and atomic number of the resultant species after the emission of alpha particle from this radium isotope. So we know that alpha particle is nothing but it is equivalent to an helium atom, right? So it is equivalent to helium atom with the mass number 4 and atomic number 2. What happens if this amount, or if alpha particle is emitted from this radium isotope? So what happens, the resultant species will have the mass number less than the 4 and atomic number less by 4 and atomic number less by 2, right? So what happens if radium isotope, if it emits alpha particle, so just reduce the mass number of this species by 4 and reduce your atomic number with the 2 units. Okay, so the resultant species is nothing but will have the species with the 224 minus 4 will get a 220, right? So mass number as 220. So simple question. So mass number as 220, and if you reduce the atomic number with 2 units, so 88 minus 2, it is your atomic number. 88 minus 2 is 86, right? 86. So you'll get a species with the mass number 220 and atomic number 86. What is this species? So which element is this one with atomic number 86 and mass number 220? It's for you to find out the species, and the answer is option A. It is 220 and 86. 220 is the mass number and 86 will be the atomic number of the resultant species. Okay, so this is about the first question. I hope it is clear. Next, coming to the second question. The second question is about what? So if lambda naught is the threshold wavelength for photoelectric emission, lambda is the wavelength of light falling on the surface of a metal, and m is the mass of electron, then the velocity of ejected electron is given by. The question is related to the concept photoelectric effect. You know what photoelectric effect is, right? So photoelectric effect is a phenomenon of ejection of electrons from a metal surface by the action of light, right? So when a beam of light hits on a metal surface, what happens? An electron of this metal will be ejected out. The phenomenon is known as the photoelectric effect, and the explanation for this photoelectric effect was given by Einstein, right? So what happens when a beam of light with energy E is equal to h nu? So by using Planck's quantum theory, we are using Planck's quantum theory to explain this photoelectric effect. So when a beam of light with energy is equal to h nu, when it hits on a metal surface, a part of this energy is used to, okay, so we have various metal atoms, right? So this is metal nucleus, metal electrons. A part of this energy is used to knock out this electron from this metal, right? Or it is used to overcome the force of attraction between the nucleus and electron of the metal, right? So part of that is used. So that energy is known as work function, which is represented by E naught, right? E naught, and the rest of the energy will be taken out by this electron as its kinetic energy, right? So this is about the photoelectric effect. When a beam of light hits a metal surface, electrons are ejected from the surface of the metal, right? That phenomenon is known as photoelectric effect. And in order to remove the electron from the metal surface, we need to supply the energy with the minimum frequency, right? So that energy is used to overcome the force of attraction between the nucleus and electron, and that energy is known as threshold energy, and that energy is known as work function, and the corresponding frequency of that energy, this is known as threshold frequency, and the corresponding wavelength is known as threshold wavelength, right? So threshold wavelength. So after that, the remaining energy of this radiation will be taken by this electron, and this electron, it moves with a certain kinetic energy. The rest of the energy will be in the form of the kinetic energy of your ejected electron. So therefore, the famous equation that is given by scientist Einstein, that is given as kinetic energy is equal to, the kinetic energy is equal to h nu minus h nu naught. So where this kinetic energy is nothing but it's the kinetic energy of ejected electron, where h nu represents the energy of incident radiation, incident photon, and h nu naught is nothing but your work function, where nu naught is the threshold frequency. And we all know that the kinetic energy of this ejected electron, it depends on the frequency of incident radiation, whereas the number of ejected electrons, that will depend upon the intensity of incident radiation. So this is about the concept photoelectric effect. Now coming to our question, the question is given like this. See, if lambda naught is a threshold wavelength for a photoelectric emission, means it is the minimum wavelength, and lambda is the wavelength of the light falling on the surface of the metal, and m is the mass of the electron, then you need to calculate the velocity of ejected electron. So we know that, see, it's very easy, kinetic energy formula, it is h nu minus h nu naught, right? So we also studied about this kinetic energy. So kinetic energy expression is nothing but half mv square, isn't it? So kinetic energy is equal to half mv square, and since the question is given in terms of wavelength, we know the relationship between frequency and wavelength, right? So that is c by lambda. So it becomes hc by lambda minus, it becomes hc by lambda naught, right? So where lambda denotes the wavelength of light, incident light, and lambda naught denotes the threshold wavelength of this photoelectric emission. So they are asked to calculate the velocity, right? So velocity of electron, this will be the mass of the electron, and v is the velocity of ejected electron. So just calculate or just rearrange this equation. For this v, will get your answer. It's very easy. See, half mv square is equal to, so I'll take the common terms here. So hc is common here. So when I take out this hc, we'll get 1 by lambda, right, minus 1 by lambda naught, right, 1 by lambda minus 1 by lambda naught, and next calculate. So if you calculate it for v, so what we'll get? We'll get v as, so it is half v square is equal to, so v square is equal to, so if I shift this m and 2 to this side, we'll get 2 hc by m, isn't it? It is 2 hc by m into, so just take out lambda naught is lambda naught, yes, lambda naught minus lambda, okay. So this is for v square, and for v it is nothing but the square root of this value, that is 2 hc by m into lambda naught minus lambda divided by lambda naught into lambda. So this is your answer. The value of v is given by the option C, 2 hc divided by m lambda naught minus lambda divided by lambda naught into lambda to the power half, okay. So this is the answer. So next question number 3. Question number 3 is, if the radius of the first Bohr orbit is x, then de Broglie wavelength of an electron in third orbit is approximately. The question is related to what? Bohr's atomic theory, right? So there the radius of first orbit is given, and you need to calculate the wavelength of the electron which is in the third orbit of your atom. Okay, so Bohr, yes, third orbit. So we have an expression, right? So we have an expression for the radius of Bohr orbit, right? So you have studied this expression, right? Rn is equal to A naught n square, right? The radius of nth orbit of a hydrogen atom or hydrogen like atom is given as Rn is equal to A naught into n square, where n is nothing but it represents the orbit or principal quantum number, and A naught is a constant. It is given as 52.9 picometer. Okay, so if I substitute, see, if we know that if I substitute the value of n, so it is first orbit, the value of first Bohr, radius of first Bohr orbit is given. So radius of first orbit is nothing but r1. So r1 is equal to A naught into 1 square, or you can say that r1 is equal to this constant A naught. So that is given A naught as x. Since r1 is given as x, we can write A naught as x, right? So and the next concept is about de Broglie wavelength. So when they asked about de Broglie wavelength, just take up the de Broglie equation, that is h by mv. Lambda is equal to h by mv, right? H by mv, and we need, so h is a constant and we need this value mv. So where we can derive this mv? So we have another expression for the angular momentum, right? So in Bohr theory we have another expression, that is mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi, right? Nh by 2 pi. So we can derive an expression for this mv, and we can directly substitute the value of mv here, right? So here, see, the question is, you need to calculate the wavelength of an electron in third orbit. So third orbit means the value of n is 3, isn't it? So just to substitute the value of n as 3, you will get mvr3 or m3v3r3. So let me write it as mass of electron in third orbit, velocity of electron in third orbit, and radius of third orbit is equal to 3h by 2 pi, right? So 3h by 2 pi. So we need this m3v3, right? So m3v3 can be written like this. m3v3 is equal to, becomes 3h into 2 pi r3, isn't it? 3h by 2 pi r3, where the value of r3 can be written like this. See, rn is equal to A naught n square, r1 is given as x, so r3 is nothing but, so you need to substitute the value of r3 here. So r3 is equal to A naught is nothing but x. So the value of radius of first orbit is given as x. So r1 is equal to A naught. So we can also write this A naught as x, right? So r3 it becomes x into n square. N square means 3 square. 3 square is 9x, right? So therefore the value of r3 is 9x. Substitute the value of r3 in this equation, we'll get or just to substitute all this value of m3, v3 and r3 in this equation, we'll get see 3h 2 pi, the value of r3 is 9x. Okay, just substitute the value of mv in this equation, we'll get lambda is equal to h divided by, it is mv is nothing but 3h divided by 2 pi into 9x, right? Or lambda is equal to, so 2 pi into 9x divided by into h divided by 3h, right? So if you solve this, we'll get h will get cancelled, and 3 ones are 3 threes are, and the value of lambda, it will be 2 into 3 is 6, right? 6 pi and x. The value of lambda, it will be 6 pi by x, right? Option D is correct, right? The radius formula is given, Rn is equal to a naught n square. Okay, they are given the value of radius of first Bohr orbit, so therefore just substitute the values that are given in the question. So that is R1. So when you substitute the value of n as 1, you will get R1 is equal to a naught, which is already given, that is x, right? So R1 is equal to a naught, which is equal to x, therefore I get taken a naught as x. Okay, so next is you need to get the values of third orbit. So just substitute the value of what n as 3, will get R3 into 9x by substituting the value of a naught as x and value of n as 3, will get R3 as 9x. Next, coming to the question part, so they are asked to calculate the wavelength, de Broglie wavelength. We have the formula for de Broglie wavelength as h by mv. So in order to get this value, we have taken the formula of angular momentum, that is mvr is equal to nh 2 pi, and we have substituted the condition, that is for nth orbit, for third orbit, m3 v3 r3 is equal to 3h by 2 pi, and we have rearranged the equation for this mv, and we have substituted the value of r. So we'll get 3h into 2 pi, 3h divided by 2 pi into 9x, and we have substituted the value of this mv in our de Broglie equation, and we'll get the value of lambda as 6 pi x. Okay, the answer is 6 pi x. Okay, so next we have few more questions to discuss. We'll discuss that questions in our next class. Thank you.